Taanis Daf Chavdalad, how's everybody doing? The Gemara tells us that Rabbi Yosi bar Oven, he went to learn by Rav Ashi, and he hears Rav Ashi saying a halach in the name of Shmuel, that if you have a trapped fish on Shabbos, in a box, swimming around, alive, and you pull it out of the box, you're chayev as killing the fish once the fish starts drying up, the size of a coin, a selah. Says Rabbi Yosi bar Oven to Rav Ashi, hey, that halach is only when it's by the fins, not in the middle of the fish. Says Rav Ashi, why don't you say it in the name of Rabbi Yosi bar Oven? He's the one that said it, and if you say something in the name of somebody that says it, maybe gula la'ilam. Says Rabbi Yosi bar Oven, that's me. I am the one that said it. He said, that's you? I didn't recognize you. Don't you learn by Rabbi Yosi the Min Yukras? He said, I used to learn there. I realize it's not very safe for me to be there. Why? Because Rabbi Yosi the Min Yukras, he was very makbid. He had a son and a daughter, both died because of him. The son, he says, he wanted to feed his father's employees, and he told the fig tree, could you please pull out pay raise right now, here and then? And so happened. So the father said, since you brought fruit before its time, you should also go back to your grave before your time. His daughter, she was machshel other people. They try to look at her. He says, listen, it's better that you should be back in your grave. So he says, that's why I ran away. I'm here. Rabbi Yosi the Min Yukras donkey was also a special donkey. Rabbi Yosi the Min Yukras would rent the donkey out. And he would expect the person to put payment on the donkey. If it was too much or too little, the donkey wouldn't move. In fact, one time, the donkey wouldn't move, and they realized they left a pair of shoes on the donkey. They took the shoes off, and the donkey moved. The Gemara tells us, Elazar ish birta, he was such a giver when it came to tzedakah, that the people collecting would hide from him, because they were worried he would give everything he has. In fact, one day he was in the marketplace with a bundle of money to buy things for his daughter, and he found out that they were collecting for 2 Yisayimim getting married. So he gave them everything he had besides one zuz, a very small amount, and he bought a small amount of wheat. He put it in his storage, and the entire storage filled up with wheat. But he told his family, you're not allowed to eat from it. You cannot benefit from something that occurred through a nace. When Benazera, they would say, let's do a Taanis, then even someone like Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish who didn't hear about the Taanis, they're part of the Taanis because the whole tzibur is part of it. But it didn't rain. Comes Ishaya Hatzayer, the younger one, and he says, you know why it didn't rain? Because the Benazera are not worthy. It's like a kala whose eyes are healthy. You know, her whole body is healthy. If her eyes aren't healthy, her body's not healthy. So too, when the Benazera is not healthy, the whole generation doesn't deserve any rain. The Gemara tells us an amazing story. Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rebbe, he said there should be a Taanis for rain, and it didn't rain for him. Comes along Ilfa, and he immediately says, Mashiv Aruach, it starts blowing wind, the Morid HaGeshem starts raining. He says, why? Says Ilfa, I'm very, very makbid on Kiddush and Havdalah in my city, even though there's no money there, I'm always there for them to have Kiddush and Havdalah. Very similar story, a great story, one of the best in Shas, one of my favorites. Rav, the Galadar in Bavel, cried for rain, nothing. Comes along a person and it starts raining. He says, who are you? He says, I'm a first grade Rebbe. I don't differentiate between the wealthy and the poor. I teach everybody the same. And if somebody doesn't have money, I don't take money from him. And if a child doesn't want to learn Torah, I have a special pond with fish. I take out a fish, I give him fish. I make it good for him and gishmak, and that's why he wants to learn. Oh, he has a bigger schus than Rav, that it should rain. The Gemara tells us that it rained for Rabbi Yehuda Hanasiya, who's Rebbe's grandchild. But only chalash daitoi, when his mind, when he was humble, and the same thing the Gemara says about Reb Nachman, Reb Papa, chalash daitoi. Rabbi says, the reason why it doesn't rain for me is because the generation is not worthy. Well, if you're going to say because they don't learn as much Torah as the generation before, we learn much more. They only learn Seder Nezikin, we learn the entire Shas. We have 13 yeshivas that talk about Uktzin. But in the generation of Rav Yehuda, they had difficulty with Uktzin. Yet when Rav Yehuda would take off one shoe to show that he's fasting, it would start raining immediately. The Gemara tells us a story that Rav Yehuda saw 2 people playing with bread. They were playing football with a loaf of bread. So he looked at them and he basically cursed them, and there was famine in the world. but then he had to take it back. So he took off one shoe and it started to rain. He said, let me take off a second shoe. And Eliyahu Hanavi came to him and said, don't do it. If you take off one more shoe, Hashem is going to destroy the world. They saw malachim that were dressed up like sailors taking dirt and putting into a ship. And that dirt turned into flour, fine flour. And they paskin, don't buy from that flour because that's flour that comes from a nace. You should not benefit from a nace. But the next day, regular flour showed up. Rava, there was no rain. He said, let's continue to fast into the night until somebody dreamt that there should be peace to you, to the Rav, to the master. He says, oh, that's a raya, that's a Isratz, and he davened and it started raining. In the time of Rava, there was a person who had relations with a Goya, and Rava gave him Malchus and he died. So the king wanted to harm him. So the mother of Shover Malka said, don't start out with Rava. He's the type of person who davens for rain in the summer, it'll rain. So he said, no, let me see. So Rava said, Rebbeinu Shalom, we heard stories about our forefathers, but we never saw with our own eyes, and it started to rain. So Rava's father told him, listen, because you went and you troubled Hashem for no reason, that's called no reason, don't sleep on your bed. The Shadim are going to come get you tonight. Sure enough, he came the next morning, he saw stabs. They stabbed his mattress. The Kohen Gadol would daven. If it's very hot, it should rain. And Hashem, please don't accept the tefillah of those on the way who don't want rain. We need rain. However, when Chanina ben Daisa would go on the way and he would daven, there shouldn't be rain, he was able to overcome the tefillah of the Kohen Gadol. Rabbi Yehuda would finish off and he said, the kingdom should remain by Yehuda, and that we shouldn't need to come on one to the other and not to another nation. Have a wonderful day.